Hello, everybody out there. Thank you for joining us for this super exciting panel. Um, it's a very hard, trying times for a lot of us, especially queer people, and I'm super excited to be having this conversation. The topic that we're going to be talking about today is reproductive rights are queer rights. We're going to be talking about the intersection of reproductive rights and queer rights, as well as the social and political climate that's happening right now. I'm super excited to introduce our panelists. Today with us, we have Viva Ruiz, Eric Maroney, and Cherish Starks. Hey, y'all. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Yeah, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves. So your names, your pronouns, and a little bit about yourself or like the organization that you work for, or all that kind of stuff. Viva, you want to start us off?
Here we go. There's the unmute. Hey, everybody. I'm Viva Ruiz. I'm a Shiana Day. I am a New York Ecuadorian person. My parents, I'm the first branch of this family over in this land. I do a thing called Thank God for Abortion. I'm an artist, creative person, also advocacy my whole life. I'm a retired sex worker. And let me see, what else can I say? Queer. I've had 2 abortions, and I could stop there for now.
Nice. Cherish.
Hi. Okay. So my name is Cherish Starks. My pronouns are they, them, sometimes he. I work for the Afiya Center. That's located in Texas, and we are a Black-led organization that centers reproductive justice and caring for, Black folk who are capable of giving birth and whatnot, and making sure they have the access to the health care and reproductive health care that they need.
Absolutely.
Hey all, Eric Maroney here, coming in from New Haven, Connecticut, the unceded territory of the Progressive, Quinnipiac, Hammonasset, Wammature people. I'm a community college professor here in New Haven. I'm also a graduate student working on a PhD in American Studies and Gender and Sexuality. More interestingly, I'm a proud union member and identify as a transgender man. I organize with an organization called the Tempest Collective, and also locally organizing with a group called Connecticut Reproductive Justice Mobilization.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you are all here with us tonight. I'm sure, like many other queer people, due to the recent overturn of Roe v. Wade, we've been talking a lot about reproductive rights, and I know that like a lot of queer people are left out of this conversation when major news anchors are talking about it, or when news publishers like New York Times or whatever. Queer people are always left out, and so basically that's what we're here to talk about. But before we do that, I know we're all coming in from different parts of the country, so I just wanted to start the conversation off by asking if y'all have attended any rallies recently. I know there's been huge rallies booming across the nation. So my question is, like, have y'all attended? What is the climate like? What are the people saying? What are the people feeling, basically? And I'll just open this up to anybody who wants to start us off.
So I know here in Texas, there have been several rallies. I have not personally been to any of the recent ones. I did when the first, opinion came out before it was actually confirmed. But a lot of the folks from my organization and a lot of my friends have been able to make it out. And it's just, everyone's very passionate right now. It's a lot for folks, and everyone's trying to still process and figure out what to do next and how to go about moving forward. I know that here in Texas, a lot of the abortion funds are on pause right now because we can't risk bringing our folks into a legal situation that could harm them, but we're still making sure to care for our folks, make sure that they know that we are here for them, and make sure that they can still seek access to healthcare that will be beneficial to them, allowing them their own birthing choices, and just being able to remain in a safe position.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess
Did anybody else? Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Viva. I'll defer to you.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, does anybody else?
Okay. So I attended a couple written here in New Haven for folks. This is a New Haven event, but it's a sort of smaller city. But 500 people came out. I would say it's characterized as multi-generational, very bold. There does seem to be a bit of a generational divide, and I don't want to over-exaggerate that. I think that it's small, but younger people are fed up with the Democrats, fed up with the NGO model. There is a boldness that is questioning even the legitimacy of the courts, let alone the decision. Debates about whether or not we pack the courts, which ultimately leads to their further legitimization, or if we look for alternative ways to think about that. And I think it's not lost on people either that in the week following the decision that the Democrats raised $80 million. So it's really I think that there's an awareness that there is a bit of political, taking advantage of the situation, and people are not having it.
Yeah.
I want to offer that I also attended the Queer March in New York City, which is organized by a group called Reclaim Pride. Probably about 10,000 people there, and just that abortion rights and access to reproductive justice were really central to the claims and to the slogans that day.
Hey, so the climate, first of all, I'm going to say I'm a little scratchy. I'm recovering from COVID. I know that you also are, Siani. I'm sorry about that. So forgive me for that. But different things, I mean, depending on where you stand, right? But I'm in New York, and there were some rallies a few weeks before, and then afterwards, right? Queer Lib is great. Reclaim Pride, they invited us this year to lead the march. So Thank God for Abortion was at the front of the march with our banner. And we've always been like queer centered. So it's been, I will tell you my experience over the years marching in Pride since 2015. There was not a lot of love for abortion in Pride from like any of the big Pride orgs. And, even a few years ago with Reclaim Pride, but this year it is what it is. And this year is different, and it better be, it has to be different, and everything's late on being different. But the rallies were, it's New York. There was a lot of, they were big. It was really beautiful to be in the organizing of that, some with the backing of like Planned Parenthood Action, the PPAC, but also be led by Repro Justice. And that was different. That felt real different this year to be in organizing where named, Black, Indigenous, people of color, Repro were named to be like, can we please put Repro at the front? I've never heard that. And so Liberate Abortion was a big part of the organizing for the big rally in New York. And that was really beautiful, to see just kind of different leadership and the people stepping aside, the stepping asideness that I haven't seen in some places, not all places that are people willing to step aside. So, but there's some different things, and there better be, I'm like, there better be different ways of doing things, because it's late in the day. So, you know, depending on how you see it, you know, there are some different things, there are some same things, but definitely, I was out for some, and then I got COVID for others, and it is, you know, it's that. I'm gonna name Adrienne Marie Brown because I was in some immersions with them, and that's why I know Charmin from Liberate Abortion, and it's really beautiful to connect with people in abortion and also in those spaces about the murmuration that you know, those of us who have been, you know, who are not new to this, it's been hard to step back a little bit and stay off the streets because the body is like, I can't, but it's that murmuration thing that everybody's picking up where everybody can't. And yeah, so the climate is all different things. A lot of anger, thank God.
Yeah. You know, the rally where Eric and I met was at the New Haven rally. I felt a lot of the anger that you guys are talking about, which I feel like is a propelling emotion for like change to happen. It can be like an ugly emotion, but you know, the people, like y'all said, are fed up with the way that things are happening right now, and I feel like anger is just like what was the word I was chasing? The anger is there, but you know, the way I was feeling at the rally in New Haven was it was small, but it was really powerful. I remember at one point we sang. There was a rabbi from the New Haven based group called Mending Minyan, and we sang this song. And I don't remember what the words were, but I don't know, Eric, if you remember it. For me, that moment was incredibly beautiful, like hearing everybody sing this. It was a very simple song, but like just like the sheer number of people singing together was like healing for me. If that makes any sense. Okay, so yeah, that was great. Connecticut just recently put out, or I guess our Governor Ned Lamont, I think his name is, recently signed a law or like a bill. I don't really know the details of it, claiming that Connecticut will be like a refuge state for folks who are like traveling to get their abortions done. Do y'all know anything about this? You want to speak on this at all?
I would be curious to hear from folks outside of Connecticut how useful a bill or a executive action like this is. Our Governor Lamont put forward a similar decision about trans folks or trans youth who are being, you know, whose families are being investigated and prosecuted in Texas. And while I think these things are important, I think that they are also part of a larger dynamic. And that is, you know, Lamont in some ways is posturing towards business too, right? He's trying to create. I was reading this article this morning in the CT Mirror. So these thoughts are not my own, but he's trying to create a climate in which he's inviting certain businesses or certain sectors to see Connecticut as a place where their workforce will have control over their reproductive ability. And so why is that useful for industry, right? Is that you have predictable patterns of you know, leave and productivity, and also, you know, an ability to attract, you know, working people to the state as well. So I do think that, you know, as we return to this discourse that's like led by kind of states' rights rhetoric, right? As frightening as that is, there's something else happening here about the competitiveness again between states for industry and for workers, and that's not good for any of us, right? Because it ultimately pits working people against one another and it uproots communities. But I'll transition by saying I'm curious to see how people outside of the state may experience bills or legislation like this. How useful, how helpful are these kinds of executive decisions? Or
That's a good playback question.
So I can't answer that question yet. I'm actually curious. That's the first time I heard about the refuge law that was the bill that was passed. However, right now we are definitely, you know, all the abortion funds in Texas are like in talks with, you know, lawyers and trying to figure out the legality and all the different barriers to find out what our next moves can be um, in that process. Which is why, like right now, we are really focusing on helping folks access all their other birthing needs, birthing care, healthcare, especially our focus here at the Afiya Center on Black birthing folks and their needs to continue to be safe and continue to get the access to the things that they need.
Yeah, I mean that speaks to like abortion funds for like many different organizations, right? Like that's what the funds are for. It's to like protect people or like get people like the money that they need to like do whatever or like get whatever they need to do or get to like be safe. So that was a really great speaking point, Eric. That was a great thought. That was a great thought.
Thank you.
Viva, you want to say anything before I move on, or are you good?
I don't know anything about that particular one in Connecticut, but I think and I appreciate the I'm like, what's in it for the state? Like, what's in it for business is a great, is like always the lens that has to be there. And also I appreciate the creative, like the workarounds for the decriminalizing of aborted people and providers. Like if, like there has to be, the imagination has to be, has to be like a big, like a resource here. Like what's, I know that California, there are other states that are creating legislations to protect, to neutralize, you know, what's happening in these, in the worst, in the most targeted states. I want to shout out New York Abortion Access Fund. They're the group that we have. They're a really small volunteer, you know, staffed group for New York City that is really you know, they're facing a lot and a humongous influx of people coming in from other states, and I need to, you know, we're learning, like what are the things, what are the things to name, and if I have Mike, I have to say New York Abortion Access Fund, if just kind of everybody get to know them and you know, it's New York. Like, yes, we have the protections that that a lot of other states don't. And yet, you know, I have a friend who tried to access an abortion here a couple of years ago and went to a pregnancy crisis place where they gave her the runaround. And, you know, she called another place and they try to talk, you know, there's no safe place really. You know, there's no, we're affected. We're all affected by this. So I just want to name New York Abortion Access Fund. And just to direct some support there if people are looking for a place to support.
Absolutely. I mean, like Cherish said, like this is all like brand new stuff, right? Like I hate using the word unprecedented, but like something like this has never happened before. So like I feel like lawyers and like lawmakers and organizations and activists are trying to figure out like the logistics of everything, like what can happen, what can't happen. It's all very new, and we're like trying to do the best that we can, I guess, is all everybody can say really. But this is great. This is actually ties into my next point. As how do I want to frame this? As like people who I'm sure we like all know what intersectionality is. As people who know and like practice intersectionality, I think it's important to think about how you know, the overturn of Roe v. Wade, as well as the overturn of any other possible like SCOTUS laws, it's important to think about how it's going to impact multiple types of people, you know? So my question is, okay, well, when I say multiple types, okay, this is what I'm trying to say. Basically, capitalism and like white supremacy and racism all works together to oppress all of um, different types of people, minorities, obviously. And so, how do you guys think that the overturn of Roe v. Wade is connected to everything I just mentioned? And Eric, you talked a little bit about this. Go ahead, Cherish. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know.
No, I'm definitely down to talk about this because I talk about this all the time. I mean, it's not a surprise that all of these things are connected. If you were listening to Black folk, if you were listening to trans folk, you wouldn't be surprised that this is even came down, because it's all tied into white evangelical supremacy. And so if you don't fit within their ideals, if you don't fit within their beliefs, then they want to see us, they're either going to force you into it or they're going to erase you. And so it's why so often I speak about, sorry, my cat is not happy that she's locked in my room right now, so you might hear her in the background. So I speak so often about how we all need to be focusing on all the different points, how they're trying to erase the history of the oppression that Black folk have experienced, how, we all need to be worried about what's happening to trans folks, how we all need to be worried about what's happening to the autonomy on folks who, are able to get pregnant and whatnot, because it's all tied together. And we can't be divided on it because that's what they want, because their agenda is all one agenda. This is all part of their one agenda. So we can't be divided on it. We need to realize that we all have to come together to focus on the one agenda that they're pushing out.
Yeah, I'll pop in. It's all connected. Yes, it's all connected. And I think the part of how they have so much power is in the separation of us, that people, and that can be seen at Pride. I saw that at Pride. Like, how the hell are we having fights at Pride, with, I'm going to say cis gay people out here that are like, but literally have said you don't belong at Pride. These are years past. So and that's actually the genesis of this project, is being in queer community and seeing how little, how people were still disgusted by abortion, to be honest, like disgusted and terrified of the topic. So in like 2014, these conversations became a design and creative project, and now it's different things. But, people then were like, why are you doing this? We already have it. And I'm not smarter than anybody else. It was like in the news, but it wasn't on the front page. So unless you're in those groups that are targeted, which we know, who aren't, but this isn't new, and it's not new. So the thing that is beautiful now are to see those separations fall. It's heartbreaking because it's so late and they got, all this ground. But it is always been the truth, as Kimberly Crenshaw described as intersectional, the intersectional lens, that climate change, all of it, like who suffers the most? Black people, people of color, poor people, people in rural areas, like trans people, queer people. And that formula, the right knows the formula. They know the formula. Like the other side knows. And they don't, they're relentless. They're relentless. And they use every tactic. And that's part of the project, this project, TGFA. I try and use a lot of the tactics of the right for us, because they're very thorough. So yes, we are all connected, and yeah, I don't know how to end that. I'm going to stay there.
I'm going to pick up right there, because I think that the work that you're doing, Viva, is incredibly important. So not only is it that So you mentioned trying to embody the tactics of the right, but there's such a cross between what you're doing and the sort of political tactic of even coming out as a queer person, right? So shouting your abortion, thank God for abortion, the projects that you're involved in. And I found, this is just personally, anecdotally, that the more vicious this legislation becomes, the more I need to be visible, right? The more I need to be out. And that's not how I've lived my life, right? This is a distinctive shift. Somebody who's a little bit older or a little bit more privileged or established in my life, I think that it's necessary to, at the bare minimum, to do that. But the other thing that I want to talk about is sort of what you hear people talk about when they talk about the crisis of care, or what Marxist feminists might call the crisis of social reproductive labor. And that's this idea that, like, we know it's work to raise human beings. Not only is it work to raise human beings, it's work to reestablish ourselves day to day, to feed ourselves, to clean ourselves, to take care of our emotional stability, to take care of our elderly, so that we could show up and create profit for somebody else. And people have talked about how we have this crisis in care where there's just not enough labor to go around, whether it be private labor or labor in the home, to provide this kind of work. And so what that means is that we need, or not we, but whatever you want to call it, the ruling class, the boss class, the 1%, there's this push to sort of recategorize bodies and to really discipline what bodies belong in what categories in order to extract that reproductive labor, if that makes any sense at all. I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Everything you guys are saying. I mean, I am divide and conquer is, I always talk about how divide and conquer works. Like, if there's no community, if there's no like mass organizing, then what you're fighting for is going to crumble. But I mean, this is a great like segue to my next question, which as hopefully everybody knows, this ties into Pride. Pride started off as a protest against police brutality, and basically that. So my next question is for you guys. What's the history of policing people's bodies, and how does this tie into the moment that we're living in today? So it ties into a little bit of my last question, but like now we're talking about actively controlling what people do with their bodies. What, like, especially like not just people, like what non-cis het white people do with their bodies. And this could like tie into like queerness or like reproductive justice, or
I can go ahead then. So there is so much history when it comes to policing people's bodies. As a Black person who, is able to have children or choose not to have children, there's a lot of history, especially there, with Black bodies being policed. You have starting off with, back when slavery was around, the way that women's bodies were literally used as, they were so heavily policed where they were just kind of forced to have children, because in the slaveholders' eyes, they saw that as, more money for them. That's what it was. And the enslaved people were very often, forced to continue to have children. But then we go a little forward, into history, and we see, again, Black folks' bodies being controlled with sterilization. We see this also with brown indigenous folks as well. That was a big problem, because they didn't, it came down to eugenics and not seeing these folks as being able to be proper parents. And so they coerced them to sterilization. They did it without telling them. We have all these different issues here. And then we come down to these days, and there's still the criminalization of Black bodies. We see it all the time. We see it in the way that we're, treated by enforcement. We see it in the way that Black folks who are living with HIV are criminalized for, having children. And, there's the history of also, of course, sterilization there as well. So there's a very long history of policing our bodies. And it just has come down to this, which is why I also want to mention that, this overturning of Roe versus Wade is not, that was basically the floor. It wasn't, the ceiling, because for Black folk, for other people of color, it wasn't still super accessible to us. And this is not anything new for us. The policing of our bodies, this is not new for us. This has been happening since, the start of America. This is in our history. So I guess I'll stop it there to pass it on to someone else. But this is not new, and this all has just led up to this.
Mm-hmm. I can jump in. That's a big one. That's a big question, right? With some really clear answers. That pre-colonization, pre the rampage of Europe and the church. I mean, in African cultures, indigenous cultures had gender variance, had exalted, gender variance, had different kinds of relationships, love relationships. That was had women rulers, had trans rulers, and heroes. So it's a long, and I'll bring in the church up in here, okay? Because so my family's Ecuadorian, and part of what made the project is, I was very, very Catholic, and that's something. The church is something that immigrant people. Here's what I hate about let me tell you about the left. That what I hate about the left is when people talk shit about people who love God, because that's a very white classist thing to do, and that is a barrier to abortion access. That that white feminism will judge people who love God. So I come from people who love God. I did, because of my queerness and everything else, divorce the church, but I have come back to the church because of abortion, and I've been indoctrinated. So I have all the language and my personal history. I know that in Ecuador, Spain came and enslaved the indigenous people and made them worship their new gods at the same places their moon and altars were. That's what happened. I know that the church has been used to scare people into submission, and it's still happening. So part of the thing I'm doing is kind of revenge for my indigenous ancestors and an amends for my white ancestors, I'm sure. Because we will have to talk about faith, or anyway, not all of us. It's not all of our work to do, but for me, because that is my authentic experience, and I come from that, and that's what implanted the stigma into me and my people, my culture and in my family. I have the obligation to speak about God. I do love God. I'm not kidding, and I want to talk to the left and the pro-abortion people can be very I don't know what you want to call it. They say intellectual. So maybe I'm an anti-intellectual. I don't know. I'm not a very institutionally schooled person, but we have to remove every barrier, and dismissing people because of their faith is a barrier to abortion, especially when you're trying to get people abortion. So I want to say that. But yes, the policing of bodies. I mean, we can talk about that for hours, and that comes from whiteness. That comes from colonization, and I know that lives within me. So that's part of my spiritual process, is to go, where am I acting out the way I was programmed to act out, and because it can't be the other people's problems, and it can't be what other people do. It's not the red states only that did this, right? It's not just the Republicans only that did this. And You know, we know, like Cherish said, abortion has been out of reach for many, many people for a long time. So the alarms have been ringing for quite a while. And yes, welcome. So everybody who's new to this, welcome. and follow people that have been doing this. Follow Black leaders, follow people of color, follow trans leaders. And, you know, they need your support and not your leadership. I'll end there.
I don't really have too much to add here. I think I'm learning a lot. It's just brilliant to be able to hear about where police intersect with your own experiences and sort of the work that you're doing. One thing that I did want to say, and Viva, you sort of alluded to this before, is that the right they're brilliant, right? I hate to give them credit, but they are, and they learn and they steal from the left, and so we're in a moment where the same logic that's been used to criminalize Black and brown youth is now being applied to trans people. So what do I mean when I say that? We know about sentencing laws. We know that Black and brown young people who are caught up in the incarceration system are more likely to be tried as adults, right? What does it mean to be a child? Who is a child's body? Where does that begin? Where does that end? We see that same logic being applied to trans people and trans youth, right? Does trans youth stop at 18? Can we prevent you from accessing transition and medical care, or I'm going to use a problematic term here, but adopting bodily sovereignty? Or does that not happen until you're 21? Or does that not happen until you're 25? So we begin to see even the manipulation of something like what is a child being applied to a criminalized framework. And so the right is really just extending some of the policies and practices and methods of coercion that it's used on Black and brown people, right, and queer people, but beginning to extend that outward in ways that are more visible or that are simply taking on new forms in the particular moment that we're living in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, so this is also a beautiful transition now to us talking about queerness. And my question to you guys is, in what ways are queer folks being left out of the conversation on reproductive rights? How do we see, you know, mass media talk about reproductive rights without talking about us queer people? This could be like a literal
I'll jump in.
question.
I'll jump in just very, very briefly, and I don't even want to call out the name, but I'm sure people are aware of the really heinous piece that was run in the New York Times just a few days ago. It was a op-ed piece titled "The Far Right and the Far Left Agree on One Thing: Women Don't Count." And essentially, it's an argument that trans and gender nonconforming people don't have the same experiences as cisgender women. And so to use terms like gestating bodies or pregnant bodies is some way an attack on women's, cisgender women's experience. So we see the same logic being applied in the debates around trans athletes as well. So I think that that's one place where a lot more exploration needs to be done, because the right is, those talking points are becoming more mainstream, right? What would be common sense to reject even several years ago. And I think that, like, too, this is not disconnected from the decline of the social movements, right? Like at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, where you have, you know, hundreds of thousands of millions of people in the streets chanting Black trans lives matter, we've experienced a backlash or a reaction to that. And I think that some of those right-wing talking points have gained traction in this moment. I'll stop there.
And I want to add to that, because it's not even just the folks on the right who are, you know, pushing back in, like, this is, you know, this is like Democrats. These are people on the left side are like, no, you don't use this language because then you're erasing women. Well, I'm very much able to give birth, though I choose not to, and I still need to be able to have access to reproductive health. So who am I then? Do I not exist? I'm obviously sitting right here. So we're being left out when it comes to, you know, the language used and just completely just erasing us. I think also when we're talking about reproductive rights, right now we're very focused on abortion because of what's going on, but that extends, or reproductive rights extends out to a wide variety of things, and that actually includes gender affirming care as well, and that is so accessible, and there's not enough people talking about it. Doctors don't really have that much information. They don't know how to talk to their trans patients. Like, there's just so much that right now is like feels almost out of reach, and we need to make sure that when we talk about reproductive rights, we're talking about everything that includes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Oh, it's so painful. It's a painful moment. It's a painful moment in so many ways. And I'm really, I see pieces like that, and it really breaks my heart. It's really hard. It's really hard to witness. So I'm going to say that first, that it hurts. And then there's just so much. There's an exorcism. I'm going to say that people really need an exorcism on the right and the left of these colonized, the colonial mindset of the binary and protecting that binary and illusions in general. And what does it do? Protecting binaries protect power, right? Protects power and keeps people othered. Yes. And I understand, like, I have family, that don't understand maybe the bigger than a binary, but that's different than being against it. That's a different thing than being against it, that knowing and being against it. So again, it's like this intellectualism that it comes from, that it's all the way in the Times, this thing. I want to shout out this other group called Inroads. Inroads is a thread I've been on for many years. It was an email thread, and it's a global abortion stigma circle. And now they have like more of a digital presence. They have like this cool website. So find them, join them. And it's been really beautiful over the years to be in touch with people in different countries all over the world and see how they're dealing with, getting people the abortions they need. I was in a workshop that was based in Jamaica that was incredible. And they spoke about how instead of naming women, because people do name women or can or have and still, but instead of just naming women, they say cis women, gender nonconforming people, and non-binary people. So they do this list that is very specific and I thought very beautiful. That they were like, we don't just say women, we say cis women. And then the people, it's and people and everyone else. So it's the global perspective for me that I'm like, okay, there is where we're at, and there is how other people are doing this, and it's definitely not just women. Where however you cut it, it's definitely never been. And I'm a person that does not identify. I say it's not incorrect, but it's incomplete. Is where is my gender? I identify as the ocean, to be honest. So that's my pronoun ish. But yes, there's a lot of pain in this, and for people who are just always left out, right? So those are the people who are also going to have trouble accessing the abortions they need. So it's not just like the words, it's the actual lived life experience. If you're not seen, then you're not cared for. And those are the people that we have to have at the front. And I think as far as the media representation, I mean, it's changing, but like I said, my thing is like everything's late. Everything's late, and it's got to change faster. And yes, there's more representation in media, and we need less, guilt trip narratives, please, and less it was terrible, like, and more accurately, it's all different things. Abortion is all different things.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the intersectionality of it all, right? Like the um like putting people in charge or in the front of the movements who are not typically seen or heard is where we got to be at. Changing language, I mean, as we shift, as culture shift, as we grow as people, as we grow as society, either for the best or for the worst. I think language shifts, and we gotta grow. We gotta grow.
I want to offer just quickly too that I think it's a politics of pessimism, right? That when reproductive justice movement leaves trans people out or focuses just on like a cis-centered understanding of it, the logic underneath that is that there's only so much justice to go around, right? Like there's only so many rights to go around. And what that kind of thinking does is it doesn't allow us to move imaginatively, right? In the ways that Cherish described, like when we talk about reproductive justice, if we're talking about abortion, we have to be clear, we're talking about abortion, that's important. But we're also talking about all these other things that allow people to reproduce themselves and reproduce their lives, right? In ways that are creative and constructive to their way of being in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a few other questions, but I'm just gonna like skip to all like my end and conclusion because we're like got like a few minutes left. But someone in the comments I saw was talking about, what about like what's going on for the future? If they can overturn Roe v. Wade, what makes us think that they can't overturn laws that make gay marriage legal, or that make being a queer person legal, or that make hate crimes make hate crimes illegal? Is that what I'm trying to say? Like what's stopping them from doing that? Like what does the future look like? I know, Eric, you've been talking about not being so pessimistic, but it's kind of hard to keep an optimistic mind when there's just so much that we don't have control over, we don't have control over who gets elected to sit on, the Supreme Court. Voting doesn't work. Like, how are y'all seeing the future right now? That was a loaded question. I'm sorry.
So I guess for
Or
me, I
words
want
of
to
encouragement.
focus on what we can do right now. I do agree that's, voting is not the only thing that people can do because that's what they always enforce. I will say, living in the South, the Supreme Court's decision basically, has allowed each individual state to make their decision, right? So I do believe that it is still important to, in your local elections, to still vote because there is still, a lot of power there. So I do want to acknowledge that. I think that you should vote in your city elections and your state elections because I'm saying for Texas, we got to get Abbott, up out of here. I'm just saying. So that part of it is still important. But then on the other hand, because voting is not going to solve everything, because we can see that, it hasn't. Being involved in your community, participating in like mutual aids, seeking out the organizations that are doing the work and figure out how you can have a hand in how can you what resources can you provide, what are you able to donate money, are you able to donate time, supporting the people color, Black leaders, Indigenous leaders who are doing the work, supporting your trans leaders who are doing the work. Whenever you see folks on your timeline who are have their GoFundMe's because they need gender affirming care, because they need to be able to, get somewhere safe to do whatever procedures they need to do. Don't just scroll past it, uplift it. If you have even a few dollars, donate to them. It's going to take a community effort and taking care of each other, because no matter what happens, that's what we're going to have to lean back on is community. and we need to make sure that we're continuing to build community and protecting each other. So that's where I go with that, because no matter what happens, that's what we have to focus on.
I agree. Anybody else thoughts on the future?
Thoughts on the future? Well, it depends on the time of the day. Have to feel the feelings. I think rage, again, is a very important element here in change. It's fuel for good action, and the anger has to go out, right? Because there's anger. The anger can't come in, has to go out. And there's so many places to put that energy. There's so many organizations mobilizing. There's so many incredible, it's a time of incredible leadership, actually. So I feel like people don't have to feel hopeless right now. I mean, I'm talking to white people. You don't have to feel hopeless, because other people telling me they're hopeless. Get yourself into the work. It's happening. And be doing stuff like around ICE. Okay, so ICE, if people don't know, is a really heinous, evil operation. And like Cherish was saying, this is a bigger picture of reproductive justice. It's not abortion in a vacuum, and a lot of people are coming in just on abortion. So welcome, and look, this has been happening all these different ways. If you were in detention, ICE detention, they were tracking people's periods coming into the States. The kind of sterilization is happening. It was definitely happening in I think it was in Iowa. No, it was in Georgia. Like 2 years ago, and that's who was caught. So the kind of reach that the state has right now, so when Roe v. Wade happened, it's like, yes, it's the next thing is terrible. And the people that affects the most are the people who can't bear it, who can bear it the least. And we do need to be enraged. And also, it's a long game. It's a big picture. Like, it's been happening. Like, this terrible thing has been happening already. So the future for me is like, it's terrible. And also, we do have a lot more people coming in. And people who have been at it longer than me teach me to be less petty. It's hard for me to be nice to people when they're coming in. But I'm learning from people who have done this longer to welcome people, to welcome them, to be out of judgment myself. I didn't, get born knowing these things. Like, I'm learning. And so that is what gives me hope, is that we have a lot more people, and we're ready, to give them work to do. And so that the people who need abortions and the people who need to be out of people are criminalized for being Black. People are criminalized for being immigrants. People are criminalized for being trans. Like, come on into this and work with us, and all of it, put yourself somewhere and know that it's going to help everybody everywhere, So I'm going to say I'm hopeful that there's more people in. Just come in. Welcome.
I want to say too, like, I think that, yes, right, to everything the two of you just said. And also, I think that some of the ways that, for me, I'm able to hold on to hope is by trying to understand where we are. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that we're living in very odd times, right? There's a crisis in, we said, people's ability to take care of themselves, right? That's the crisis in care. There is a crisis in global imperialism, right? There's a climate crisis. There's shifting in the ways that capital is able to continue to extract profit from people. But we've also just lived through a grand experiment, right? Like the COVID lockdowns and the legislation that was providing funding to families to be able to care for their children, right? That $300 stipend per child begins to give us a vision of what is possible, right? And so that's one solution, right? This redistributive solution where we can take the resources that exist and give them to the folks who need them. And then there's the other vision, which is that there's not enough resources, and so we need to wall ourselves off and reinforce categories and use the police in order to ensure that those distinctions exist. But I think I'll close on this. We know that public opinion for abortion is wildly popular. Much greater margins than when Roe v. Wade was initially decided. But popular opinion doesn't change anything unless there's bodies in the streets behind it, right? It's that anger that Viva was talking about. And I think that while we can't will that into being, we can't just will spontaneous mass activity into being. What we can do is work slowly and methodically to build the networks in our own locales, just as Cherish was speaking about.
Absolutely. I mean, over the weekend, I'm sure y'all saw the memes where it was like, if you guys aren't celebrating the 4th of July for the first time this year, like, and you're upset that like Roe v. Wade happened, like you're probably like a cishet white lady. And so welcome to this movement. We need bodies, we need people. We need you to follow Black trans-led organizations because they've been out here doing the work. So I need you to follow, I need you to back them. I don't need you to talk about, Roe v. Wade took away my rights. Like, we all have our rights taken away. Like, welcome.
I do want to add one thing. I also want to say that, yes, as I already said, follow these leaders, but at the same time, don't expect them to do the work of saving you. Don't put that on us. You need to be out here doing the work and save yourself as well. Like, you can't expect us to do the work. You can't do that. And also talking to your folks, especially, our allies, telling our allies that they need to talk to their folks. They need to talk to their families. They need to talk to their friends. They can't just, sit at the dinner table in silence. You guys are in a lot safer position to talk to your folks. So you need to be doing that. And that's why I wanted to add real quick for our time.
Yes. Thank you for adding that. So before we run out of time, I know that we've added a couple articles to the comment section for folks to look at. There are articles that y'all referenced. Do you guys have anything else that you want to plug in? Like your social medias or any other organizations that are doing the work, or anything at all?
I would just say locally for folks here in Connecticut, it's the Connecticut Reproductive Justice Mobilization. And then also if you're up in the Hartford area, the Nonprofit Accountability Group is doing really, really fantastic work. I also want to plug the group that I'm part of, which is called Tempest Collective, Tempest Magazine. And then there's a journal that's done some really amazing work drawing connections between the attack on abortion rights and the attack on trans rights. And so I'll link that as well. And then I just want to thank the Pride Center and also Viva and Cherish. I've learned a lot.
I want to thank y'all as well. And, for having me, for the conversation with all of y'all. I also wanted to drop that we did start a campaign, all hands on deck, to get people in and moving within the work at the Afiya Center.
Same thank you to you, Eric and Cherish. I learned a lot, and I'm so happy to be in this group today. Thank you for the invitation. Siyani, is that how you say your name?
Mm-hmm.
Siyani. This is my shit. I love to be in these circles talking about this, chopping it up. It's part of what gives me hope. And the thing that I always I've been trained to say, which I love to say, is donate to your local abortion funds, And you can find them through the National Network of Abortion Funds. You can go and find your town or like the place that you want to donate to. And also Keep Our Clinics is a network of independent clinics, and that if you donate there, it literally keeps their doors open. They're in a lot of jeopardy right now. A lot of the funds in mainstream feminism has gone toward Planned Parenthood. There's a big narrative shift that is happening. Be a part of that, and think of your local clinics. Sometimes any clinic defenders, that could be you. Reach out to them. Thank God for Abortion. You're invited. You're invited. We're a party. Come party with us. And the way you can most reach us is the IG, and it's Thank God for Abortion. And we'll post like actions we know about, and you're always invited.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I honestly had like 4 more questions. This conversation can go on for an extended period of time, but thank you everybody for joining us, our panelists, and all the folks that are watching us at home. I hope y'all continue to have this conversation. I hope y'all continue to, boost up each other and take care of yourselves and take care of your community, because we got to do it for us. They're not going to protect us. We protect us. So yeah, thank you guys so much for being here, and I hope everybody has a great night.